Good morning, everybody. Boris Johnson is making a comeback, or so it seems. Now, there's been news that one of the major donors to the fake Conservative Party, who's called Christopher Harborne, who's bankrolled the Tory Party and the Brexit Party and the Reform Party over the previous years for £15 million, has just given £1 million to Boris Johnson's office. Now, there's been reports about this in lots of outlets, but also it goes with the proviso that someone says, actually, I'll quote them, it's not about a comeback plan or anything like that. But if someone gives someone £1 million, it's going to be for a purpose. And it's also being widely reported. So I think what's happening here is that they're putting out the idea to see what people think of it, and then they'll look and see what support he has and then decide what to do. Now, obviously, last year in 2022, we've had 3 different prime ministers, and Boris Johnson was kicked out by the majority of Tory MPs in Parliament. And, quite rightly so, because he was a disaster. There was the whole Partygate scandal and fiasco where it was shown that despite all of the draconian rules that he and his regime had put in place about lockdowns and everything, and then some of his health ministers were firing care home workers and trying to fire doctors and nurses because they didn't take an experimental injection. After all of that fiasco, he was down in the polls and was losing popularity, as well as his adherence to the disastrous net zero policy, whereby the fake Conservative Party over the last 12, 13 years of power was literally blowing up our coal power stations and trying to replace them with wind turbines and solar panels, which of course is pumping up the price of energy and inflation, along with the financial disaster to the national budget during the lockdown period, where the current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, borrowed 400 to 500 billion pounds and is continuing to borrow 200 billion pounds a year to keep the country going, to pay for things that we don't need, as well as pushing for an escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. With all of that, he was just an utter disaster. And he was going down in the polls, of course, and losing elections, losing by-elections all over the place in seats which, up until the by-elections for decades and decades, even hundreds of years, had been safe Tory seats. So they got rid of him and replaced him with Liz Truss, who was even worse. Liz Truss actually got stuffed up by the Bank of England. They really pulled the rug out from under her feet. What I would say in Liz Truss's defence is that she did want to cut tax rates and increase economic growth, which is a good idea, but it's just the wrong time to do that, with also the increases in spending that she wanted to do. Cutting taxes is great, but you've got to cut wasteful government spending. What she wanted to do was cut taxes, but increase spending, send more money to Ukraine and so on, and things like this, which really the two things didn't go together. So the Bank of England pulled the rug out from under her feet and she was gone within a week of that happening. And then we got Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor, who's notable by his absence and it's like really lack of personality, character and charisma and policy. And really, he looks like he's just a placeholder for the next thing to come along. So obviously there will have to be an election by the end of 2024, so within the next 2 years. If he stays there, he could hold out till the end and just be increasingly bland and boring and terrible, and then pave the way for Keir Starmer, who again would be even worse. But I think what a lot of people in the fake Conservative Party are thinking is that they're going to try and have one last crack of the whip, bring back Boris again, like they did before the 2019 election, bring him in, try to get a Boris bounce, as they call it, and win the next election. So that seems to be some of the thinking, and you've always got to follow the money. So if big Tory donors are now giving lots of money, big money to Boris Johnson's office, it means that there's something afoot. At least, you know, they are thinking about Boris making a comeback. Now, so I would not be surprised if that happens this year sometime. Whether it will have the effect that they expect it to do, well, I'm of the opinion that it won't, because he was already a liability and a disaster the first time. He's not going to be any better if he comes back again. He is anti-conservative, even though he portrays himself as a conservative. He has presided over a terrible regime which has corroded freedom. It's blown the national budget. It's the most financial irresponsible government we've ever had in this country. It's woke as hell, and it is committed to destroying our energy infrastructure to the point of saying that we won't be allowed to drive our own cars around, we won't be allowed to buy new petrol and diesel cars from 2030. I mean, huge interference in what should be the free market, and actually putting a ban on something that was worked well for over 100 years. They are totally allegiant, and he is totally allegiant, it seems, to the World Economic Forum and the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, he wears the little ring with 17 colours on his lapel to show you his allegiance to that plan. So anyone who's allegiant to the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals is not allegiant to the people of the United Kingdom. So that's why I don't think he's going to have a good second coming if he does do that. And we will see support for the fake Conservatives and Labour continue to crash. And what that means is that hopefully we'll be able to have in Parliament a party that supports the people. So, as I always say, I've made the Heritage Party and set this up, and you can have a look at our manifesto. It is a properly conservative manifesto that's just simple common sense that everyone would have thought was common sense 30 or 40 years ago. So please do have a look at our manifesto. Join us, stand for us, vote for us, support us if you can. And let's get rid of these fake conservatives. Despite where the money's going, money isn't everything. If we have millions of people supporting the right thing and voting for a party that will put the people first, then we can get rid of the fake Conservatives and Labour that is so woke that it doesn't even know what a woman is, and also the LibDems and the Greens and the SNP that are just as destructive as the big two parties in Parliament. Okay, thanks for listening. Please do give me a thumbs up for this video if you can. Subscribe to my channel and join the Heritage Party on heritageparty.org. Thanks everyone. God bless you all.